And if you're listening at home, it's been approximately a minute and a half since we last left off.
Yeah, I don't know how long it's going to be since the episode when the episodes come out, but we are still in the same recording session.
Mm-hmm. It's been, a minute and a half is generous. It's been like 20 seconds.
If that, yeah. We said goodbye in a rushed way, and we're like, all right, let's keep going.
Yep, let's keep going. We got 3 more episodes to cover, and by God,
we will cover them.
We sure will.
Like, I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
Have you ever smoked?
It's been a long time.
Like cigarettes?
Not to a point where it was habitual, but I did several times.
Gotcha. I have never smoked once.
It sucks.
I have heard and seen horrible things.
I've never had enough where I've suffered nicotine withdrawals that I've known,
Yeah, I've had extended family that have smoked like multiple packs a day for like their entire life.
Yeah.
So I've seen the devastation.
I've had a lot of the older members of my family only stopped smoking around the time that I was born, and they were having grandchildren.
Right.
Which would be around the time that this show came out, really.
That's fair.
So quitting was kind of the big thing then. A lot of them passed to lung cancer and other smoking-related long-term issues. So I've seen it happen. It's taken a lot of people.
A lot of my extended family are just walking dare examples. They're just the living embodiment of why you don't fucking smoke.
Yeah, I watched this episode. By the way, it's a smoking episode for those that don't know.
It is a non-smoking episode. This is all about like how bad smoking is for your body. It's pretty effective at showing it too.
It's very effective. One of my notes later on that I think is very appropriate here is, do you think an episode like this would ever happen for vaping?
I think if there was another show, I think I could see a show like a Bob's Burgers or something with a little bit more heart trying to pull it off.
Yeah.
But I couldn't see, like, a lot of shows, especially adult comedy shows, try to not be so serious or take it so seriously where, like, oh, we don't want to have a heart, we just want to tell shitty jokes all the time.
Yeah, and this one
tells a lot of jokes, but they're told in such a way where it's like, you understand how serious the situation is.
Yes.
Like, to an extreme degree.
Yes. The final climax of the episode is really fucking harrowing. It's funny, but it is also very uncomfortable.
If you sit for a second and consider the situation like as an actual thing,
yeah.
Like if this actually happened to someone's family, you would be horrified to hear that. You would be absolutely distraught to hear what these people went through.
Yes.
And it's yeah.
And the funniest part about it is that it starts off with a B plot.
Yeah, it does. It does. It also starts off with Hank having a Pavlovian response to being in the shower, where they're cleaning like the grout and stuff out of the shower.
Yeah.
And Luann comes in and he freaks out. He's inside the shower technically, but they're all clothed. The shower's not on.
Yeah, he's cleaning the grout. He's in jeans and a shirt.
And he freaks out. He's like, Luann, you gotta knock. And
you gotta knock. I'm in the shower.
And it's like, you have had people bust in on you a bunch of times, haven't you, Hank?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it happened in, like, the first episode.
Yeah.
But also, fucking come on, dude.
I chalk it up to being like, okay, he was a football player. He had a very abrasive father.
He's a bit timid.
He's already a bit timid. I can already imagine he would not be happy people seeing him in a very vulnerable state.
Yeah.
Over time like that. So I understand it, but at the same time,
you're wearing jeans, my guy.
Dude, you are the most uptight person in this house. Relax.
Yeah. Even Peggy has to calm him down.
Yeah.
But Luann comes in with Ladybird. Ring a bell. Ladybird episode. Yeah.
Ladybird episode. Woo!
Ladybird looks real fucked up.
Ladybird is the equivalent of what I would call a 5-year-old splattering finger paint onto a piece of paper.
Ladybird is practically in Joker makeup.
Yeah. True.
Yeah.
True.
She's got big old lips and she's got splotches of white on her.
Did you hear who Hank compared her to? Hank said she looked like Fran Drescher.
That's right, yes.
The fucking nanny.
Oh my god. So yeah, Ladybird comes in, dressed to the nines, really. And we find out that this was not intentional, as everyone thought Luann did this on purpose.
Yeah, because everyone just assumed Luann would have put makeup on this dog.
Let's be real.
I mean, yeah.
She might have. But
She might have.
no, it's actually Ladybird eating Luann's makeup, which she needs for school.
Very expensive, non-cruelty makeup, too.
Yes, they talk about the consequences of this, and Luann lets out this killer line: I spent a lot of money on cruelty-free makeup, I'll do a lot more than smack her.
Yeah. Yeah. Luann has some of the best lines early on. They've all been really funny.
She really does.
But then it slowly I shouldn't say slowly, it quickly becomes a Bobby and Joseph scene.
Yes, as they are in a dumpster making a quote-unquote death cart.
Well, I wrote down in my notes, I'm like, Bobby and Joseph are playing My Summer Car. Oh, no.
Yeah. I like to imagine that this comes after Bobby has seen Mad Max in some capacity.
Exactly.
Because they find, like, scraps of a spark plug, and then they rattle off literally every other piece of a car that you could need, as if they are just a hop, skip, and a jump away from having a car of their own.
Yeah, it's like they're acting like they have a whole frame, they have all the tires, they have everything they need, but now they're just talking about the nitty-gritty, smaller pieces.
They found the scrapped ceramics from a spark plug. They could not be further from a death cart. And yet they're hopeful. That's the power of youth.
Well, they were acting like they only needed, 3 more pieces and they'd be perfectly fine with their death cart. It was really funny.
But those 3 pieces were every single wheel, an entire frame body.
And literally anything else that would propel the car forward, like the engine.
Literally anything other than the ceramic insides of a spark plug.
But what they end up finding as well was a single discarded cigarette, which was like... I don't remember the name of it, but it was the preferred brand of the Canadian Mounties.
It was Manitoba brand. It was Canadian cigarettes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I knew it was Canadian, but I couldn't remember the name of it.
The preferred cigarettes of the Canadian Mounties. Which I think Joseph says something along the lines of like, "Do you know what that is?" And Bobby responds, "I don't have one."
Yeah.
Of course you don't have a Canadian Mountie, boy.
Yeah. So they go and they're like at a gas station or something.
Yes.
And someone comes out of a bathroom and they very quickly run over and sneak into the gas station bathroom and light up the cigarette together. And they're passing it back and forth, and
they're holding their breath, by the way.
Yeah, I was saying, you know the meme of like someone smoking like weed, like, no, don't hold it in, it doesn't do anything.
They are just holding it in. They don't know how to smoke a cigarette at all.
And Hank comes up and they're holding the door closed because they don't want him to come in and see them smoking. And Hank says some of the funniest things, like John occupied, Juan occupado. It's like
por favor, Juan occupado, sí.
Yeah.
The boys just say, see.
He's like, Bobby, is that you in there?
Opens the door.
Of course,
Bobby's got the cigarette in his mouth.
Yeah.
Dun dun dun.
And that just sets the whole tone for this episode. This is I would say this is a better
PSA?
This is a better PSA than anything Dare has ever created, I think.
Yes.
Because it is so brutally devastating to what it does to you.
Yes.
Because they always focus on like, oh, it'll kill you. Oh, it'll destroy your lungs, which it will.
Yes.
But they never show like the social and emotional toll it takes on you fucking getting addicted to literal tar.
And the withdrawals afterwards.
And the withdrawals afterwards.
All of which is discussed in the next scene by Peggy, who is chewing out Bobby in the living room for having a cigarette.
Well, because they both were, because we find out that both Hank and Peggy were habitual smokers back in like their teens into their 20s.
In Hank's own words, they were healthier back then.
Yeah, cigarettes were healthier back then, yeah.
I wrote down Peggy gave up smoking. That explains a lot.
Yeah, Peggy gave up smoking when she got pregnant with Bobby because she didn't want him to come out deformed.
In my own mind,
along those lines.
In my own mind, that explains her neuroticisms and anxiety very well.
Yeah, she's just been in with like 12-year withdrawals.
Yeah, and Peggy has a very good idea of what it does to you. She seems to be more cognizant of it than
well, they're both
Hank.
pretty Well, no, they're both pretty aware of it because he takes the box and he starts listing off like what it can do to you. Like he mentions like lung cancer, emphysema, and and Bobby responds,
I thought those were the ingredients.
Yeah, I thought those were the ingredients. And I mean, he's not wrong.
She responds with like, "Don't get smart with me, boy," as if that's not a very honest thing from her son.
As if that wasn't one of the most honest things Bobby has ever said.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like they both very, very clearly know what the problem with smoking is.
Yes.
It's just they
have very different ways of figuring out how to dissuade their son.
And unfortunately, Hank is the one that gets levied or gets the idea to deal with it right then and there.
And he does the big thing that everyone used to say you have to do.
Well, I think Hank took it to an even more like extreme than I've ever seen.
Yes.
Because I like think like, oh yeah, make your kid like smoke an entire carton and see how they feel.
Yeah.
But like forcing Bobby to smoke an entire like 200 cigarettes in like an hour or two.
Yeah.
Is like that is just a brutal like sentencing.
But the entire time, Bobby isn't doing it very well because he never smoked before. So
yeah,
Hank,
he's
being
holding it weird.
not a lifetime, but like several year-long smoker, is giving him tips on not how to look like a sissy while he's doing it.
Because he's holding it like he's pinching it between his index finger and his thumb.
He's holding it like he'd hold a teacup.
Well, I think he calls him European almost.
Yes.
Doesn't he calls him like...
Yeah. He doesn't want Bobby to look like a European dandy.
Yeah.
And so he shows Bobby how to hold it properly, and then Bobby isn't smoking right, so he...
Because he just keeps like sucking in and puffing and puffing and puffing. He's not like
you're not doing it right. You gotta take a long breath. And that seals their fate right there.
Yeah, Hank displays how to smoke a cigarette properly by taking a long puff, and then
he looks so
relapses.
Satisfied.
He immediately relapses.
He immediately relapses as he forgets for a moment that he needs to give it back to Bobby and takes another one before giving it back.
There's another really funny moment. I'll see if I can find it as well, or at least I'll point it out to you on like where it's at in the episode.
Uh-huh.
But there's a very funny like animation point in that segment where he's showing him how to smoke the cigarette slow.
Yeah.
And he says he's like slow. And the way he's animated, like he starts moving in like frame by frame, kind of the same way that Bobby's like neck rotated. Yeah. He started to lean backwards and like it looked like they cut the frame rate down by like a fourth.
Yeah.
It was really weird to see, but it made me laugh.
It is the scene that is used in every single YouTube poop in which Hank gets high.
Absolutely.
But
there is one thing we just blew over. I totally forgot to bring up.
Oh yeah.
When Joseph gets confronted by Dale.
Oh, that's right. Joseph gets cornered by Dale in Dale's basement, I presume.
Yeah.
To talk about it with his dad.
Yeah, Joseph's like, I won't smoke a cigarette again.
Dale's like, hold on, I want you to keep an open mind.
Yeah. He's like, you can read this report from the U.S. government about the effects of smoking, or you can hear it right from the mouth of the tobacco industry.
And he opens it up. It's a fucking picture book. It's a pop-up picture book.
It's a pop-up picture book with like an anthropomorphic cigarette and stuff.
Jonathan looks like actually perturbed by this. I think he has just been scared straight.
It is so funny.
It's so fucking stupid.
That is actually like a Simpsons gag. Just like, here's the tobacco industry's word. It's a fucking pop-up book for like toddlers.
In another universe, Lisa is the one holding that book.
Oh, it's so fucking funny. But
Bobby's smoking his carton. There's 200 cigarettes to go through.
It's so many cigarettes.
There is a montage of him going through it, and the box is piling up, and he gets greener and greener. I've written down, Bobby smoked himself into the Grinch.
Yeah, seriously. And it ends with him, like, he's like, I can't finish it anymore, I'm gonna throw up.
Yeah.
And then Hank's like, that's what I wanted to hear, and then Bobby actually fucking hurls all over the lawn.
He just says, Bobby, when you're done with that, could you grab the hose and clean it up a little bit? Like it's not his fault.
Yeah, and then from there, everything spirals horribly out of control.
The next note I have is great. They've got anxiety now.
Well, so Bobby gets immediately addicted.
Yes,
because he smoked 200 cigarettes. So he's very irritable. He's very on edge constantly now.
Mm-hmm.
While Hank is also very antsy and like anxious throughout the day.
Yep.
I wrote down here because he's I don't know if you probably noticed it because it's pretty obvious, but Hank is using like his label maker and labeling everything in his immediate area at his desk.
That's a later point. That's a later point.
Is it?
Yeah. Because the first thing they do is Hank. Neither of them can sleep that night.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
And Hank is getting really like testy with Peggy.
Yeah, that's right.
And so he gets really upset with her for no reason other than he's just facing withdrawals, and sneaks out back to light up a cigarette, away from the family so nobody knows.
Yeah, so no one sees it.
On the other side of the house, guess who else is sneaking out to smoke a cigarette? It's Bobby.
Yeah, it's Bobby.
Because 200 wasn't enough for one day. We had to have 201.
You gotta get one more.
Yeah. The following day, he lights up a cigarette with the boys out back. And of course, everyone but Dale is very upset with him for this because
the Boomhauer and Bill are so upset.
Yeah.
And Dale's like, "Welcome back. I knew you'd do it."
And that is almost enough to scare Hank out of it himself because he doesn't like the way that Dale is treating him with this.
Yeah.
Of course, Bobby is trying to hide that he wants a cigarette, but he's also getting more grouchy periodically.
Yeah, he's just very, very, very angry and very testy.
And Peggy shows up at some point while he's...
Well, because I think we're getting some things out of order, because I do have in my notes this, like, Hank is fucking with the label maker, and he almost destroys a propane gas tank as he asks
That's right.
Enrique.
Yeah. That's right.
One of the gas trucks, the drivers, he asks him for a smoke, and they're talking out back, and it's a really kind of sweet scene to see Hank hang out with.
Yeah, they're actually connecting and like figuring stuff out, and it's all over a cigarette.
And he takes the cigarette with him as he's getting picked up by Peggy, I think, for some reason.
Yes, yeah. Peggy wants to take him out for a lunch break, and he.
No, that's right. Yeah.
He won't just toss the cigarette until he's in the car, but he's trying to hide it from her.
And
of course, it almost falls onto a puddle of ambiguous fluid next to a giant propane silo.
And Enrique jumps for it and catches it.
Last moment.
Very last moment. And then they go out to lunch, and I wrote down here, because they sit down together at this booth, and Hank lights up a cigarette, and Peggy's confused at first.
Yeah.
And Hank's like, "Oh, come on, Peg, you just haven't had it in a while," type thing.
You remember how it was in the old days.
And I wrote down the most romantic smoke blowing into someone's face.
Yes.
Because he just blows a bunch of secondhand smoke into her face, and she like breathes it in and like,
falls into her memories.
Yeah, there's a whole flashback sequence of them as like teenagers / young adults.
That's where I was thinking about whether or not someone would make the same sort of montage, but for vaping. Because it looks ridiculous, honestly.
It's so silly. Like, by the end of it, they're like laying on the football field.
Yeah.
And like they're both smoking 2 cigarettes at the same time.
They're kissing on the football field, and when they break, they both exhale smoke.
Yeah, it's so fucking stupid.
It's so dumb. So Peggy's hooked again.
Yeah.
Pretty much immediately.
So they're both starting to smoke, and they're trying to like.
They're kind of trying to hide it from Bobby.
Yeah, and like there's a point where they're like, the tile in the bathroom needs to be looked at, and they're just leaving one cigarette in the bathroom and like
they're leaving it on the windowsill. Yep. But of course,
Bobby gets really pissed off.
Bobby's got withdrawal symptoms out the ass, so he has completely lost control of himself. He snaps at them.
Yeah. Yells at them about the tile. Like, if you go wash the damn tile, and if the tile's clean, then shut up.
If it's clean, shut up about it. And instead of addressing this, they decide, hey, let's go eat at that place we used to go to when we smoked.
Smokies.
A jazz club named Smokies.
And they get there and like, is Smokey still here? We'd love to see him. He died. He
passed away. He's not with us anymore.
He's not with us anymore. About 5 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
She said something else. I'm like, they should have seen him or something like that. He was worse or something like that.
Yeah.
And then she asks if they want smoking or non-smoking.
And they pick smoking.
Of course they say smoking, so they start walking through the jazz club, and all this music's playing. Everyone's enjoying a good time, and they open up this little door in the back of the building.
It's a completely segregated zone.
Wholly different building with this loud hacking and coughing from everyone in there, smoke billowing in the ceiling. And I wrote down in my notes, this is the most accurate portrayal I've ever seen of a smoking section.
Yes, it is mostly people who have been weathered beyond their age or
Like-
are straight up elderly.
Yeah, like people in
Hacking
like
up
their
a lung.
50s to 70s, just hacking up a lung.
Multiple people with those like machines you press to your throat to speak with a hole in their
Yep.
neck.
Yep.
Yep, the full things, and that is when Hank and Peggy briefly remember that maybe this isn't the way for them,
Maybe they don't want to be smoking.
but they think about it.
Does it finally snap to them when they like go home that night and Bobby sneaks a cigarette and burns like his own blanket?
Yes, Bobby's trying to smoke under his blanket, and he accidentally lights his blanket on fire, and that noise is enough to bring them in. But of course, they're both also smoking at that time,
Yeah.
so like everyone's doing it, and they decide that they can't do this. Somewhat with Luann's like frustrations. Luann is also there.
Yeah, Luann's telling them they need to stop it, to look at themselves.
Yeah, of course, you guys, relapse. You got to stop. You can't expect Bobby to stop if you two are smoking.
So they decide like, oh yeah, well we'll work together. We'll go to like a counseling type thing, and they put out their cigarettes.
They put out the cigarettes.
Yeah.
It's just, hey, that's my rug.
Yeah, they throw their cigarettes down onto Bobby's rug and put them out, and like, hey, it's my rug. And Hank responds with, "We all have to make sacrifices, Bobby."
So Bobby also stomps out a cigarette on his own rug in his room.
I think, again, this episode is another one of those ones where they always try to make Hank look so bad unintentionally.
Yes.
Like, because they end up going to like the equivalent of like an Alcoholics Anonymous for smokers, and it's so fucking bad when Hank gets put on the spotlight for letting his son smoke cigarettes.
Yes.
And the whole family's addicted, and it is another one of those moments of like, oh, Hank is just getting reamed over the coals for something he unintentionally tried to not let happen.
Yes.
He didn't want Bobby to get addicted, and instead he made the whole family addicted.
Yep.
And it's another one of those scenes that's like kind of like the Hotel Arlen with Cotton, that is so uncomfortable for something Hank didn't even really do like intentionally.
Yeah.
It's like, God, he needs to figure out his priorities.
Oh yeah. Side note, ring a bell. It's the Leshies spotted another funny animation incongruity.
Okay.
Did you notice in that moment while they were in the Smokers Anonymous meeting, they were doing the whole look to your left, look to your right.
Yes.
Who do you see,
Yes.
buddies? And Peggy's the only one who's got her lefts and rights mixed up.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was an intentional joke.
I think it is,
Or-
but it's very funny. It's very funny for something that lasts for, I don't know, a quarter of a second, a half second.
Yeah, I rewound a couple times because I was like, did I see that wrong? No, she looks the wrong way.
Yeah. That coming hot off of the episode where her footage is reversed to have her writing backwards is very funny. With the idea that Peggy has no concept of left or
Yeah,
right
maybe-
at all.
Honestly, maybe she just doesn't know her left from her right.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know.
Also, Bill showing up to be the best worst wingman yet again.
And he's not even a smoker. He's just there because he wants company. It's like, I just need,
He just wants some friendship.
he says something like, I just come to these things because, everybody needs a little help. 6 times a week.
6 times a week.
Like, God damn, Bill.
Holy shit, man! And he's trying to be so supportive of Hank, and as they finally leave because they're getting confronted over the fact that
they've
Bobby
left.
addicted, and
Yeah. And he is the only one who's standing up and cheering for them.
because they like yelled at the people that were like supposedly judging them for rightfully getting yelled at for getting their son addicted to cigarettes.
Yeah, making him smoke an entire carton, which is horrible.
Abysmal.
Yeah.
But then from there it becomes, I would consider, a psychological horror story.
And Luann is the
Because-
only hero.
Luann is the only hero, and it's so sad. Mm-hmm. What her reasoning behind it, because I wrote it down, is like, she's like, I came from a dysfunctional family and a broken home, and I'm not letting it happen here too. I'm like,
Yes.
fuck, that's too real.
She is in tears, screaming at them, function, damn you.
Well, because they're all, so for context,
Yes.
they're all fighting over like one last cigarette that they have in the house.
Well, they backing up a little bit, they leave the Smokers Anonymous, and they are just They know that they shouldn't be smoking, but they keep going behind each other's backs to try and get a smoke. And Luann is the only one who's able to stop them. She thinks she's making progress, but of course they relapse. Again, as all addicts do. It's fine, it's normal. But she when they are all like so deep in their withdrawals that they are tearing each other apart. There's the dinner table scene where they're screaming at each other.
Yeah.
And Luann
Luann is stuck in the middle trying to somehow mediate these three nicotine addicted people.
Hank is screaming at her like, does this woman ever shut up?
Well, then they get the nicotine patches from
Bobby eats one.
Bobby eats a nicotine patch and they try to force it out of his mouth and he's like snarling like a beast.
And somehow it's less threatening than Min at the bar at at Bobby's birthday.
Weird feral noise at the barbecue or the party.
Yeah. They go through like the withdrawals, but they're all trying to sneak a smoke away from each other. And of course, Luann isn't having it anymore. Her own family is dysfunctional. She can't stand it. She's not losing another one. So she takes the last cigarette in the house, lures all of these weathered, withdrawal-stricken zombies of the hills into a single room and jams it shut. I have a note here. Bobby looks like 40 in this scene.
Oh, yeah. They all look fucked up. They really changed their models, like, shockingly, like, pretty... like
very strikingly
holy.
They're all lumpy and disheveled.
Yeah, their hair's all messed up, their clothing's all like just disheveled and gross.
Yeah, but even just the basic silhouette of their body has become kind of morphed and lumpy and gross.
And they all kind of turn on each other and start trying to like fight each other for the last cigarette that they have.
Leading to Peggy.
Yeah.
Peggy with the last cigarette in her hand, and they're all trying to they're trying to negotiate. But they're all willing to backstab each other.
Yeah.
So Peggy threatens to drop the cigarette out the window if she can't just have it. Of course, Bobby and Hank have decided in the final moment to team up against her to take it. So she doesn't bluff. She drops it out the window. They watch it sail away. And then
doesn't it end up at like a jail?
Yes, it lands. It floats on the winds of a storm that's going on at the same time, and it lands in a jail cell where all four prisoners in the cell tackle each other to take it. Very good gag. But they have to weather out the storm in this dark room where they've been locked and jammed in by Luann, dealing with their withdrawal symptoms all night long.
It's so sad and harrowing in a way that I wasn't expecting, like a cartoon, like funny show haha on Sunday to do.
And it's exacerbated more by this footage of like outside the house, the storm growing stronger and more angry as they're struggling harder and harder through the night. Like the wind is ripping signs off of their foundations and like tearing the trees apart, sending it knocks over a machine that dispenses cigarettes outside of a gas station. It's just so windy, and they are weathering the storm inside and outside. When morning finally comes and they get their silhouettes back in order again.
Yeah, they all sleep together in the same bed, and it's really sad because like there's a moment like in the middle of the night where they're like all hugging each other and sitting together. And then eventually the morning comes and they all come outside and everything is just fucked up outside.
Everything is trashed. There's like a tree like over in their yard. The fence has been blown in.
Yeah, pieces of fence everywhere.
But they're not lumpy anymore. They've broken the habit. They're all good. Luann has her family again. And they decide to throw the old pigskin around to just celebrate how fresh life is. But it's a punctured, limp bag.
A flaccid football.
And it's the stupid, like, credits gag as they are all crowding around in a circle to throw a football around. But it's so limp, it can't go more than, like, 3 feet, so they're all, like, stepping closer to each other.
And, like, they throw it, and, like, oh, here, over here, oh. And they, like, keep getting...
It's okay, like, I got it. And then they step a few feet forward, and they throw it again, and, of course, it doesn't reach, because it's a wet sack.
Yeah.
And then the world just kind of, like, closes on that moment of it looking like garbage. Trashed by the storm, but they've beaten their addiction, and the episode just ends.
It cuts to a PSA from
that's
Boomhauer,
right, from Boomhauer.
He's showing like I think it was like 2 different belts from a car of some sort.
I think they were air filters.
Yeah, they were air filters. Like, oh, this is he's
dang old lungs off for smoking into one after.
he starts going off on this tangent, and then he has a snide like backhanded comment about Robert Downey Jr.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, because at that point Robert Downey Jr. was like, I think still kind of in his really bad downswing.
Yes, he was at his worst.
So I get it, but it was also just like, God damn, Boomer, take a swing like that.
Very different world now. He ends his PSA talking about like dang old makes you have a low sperm count in your hair, man. as like I think one of his many women partners drags him off screen.
They just drag him off screen, and then the episode just ends
immediately after he talks about low sperm count.
It's I think of the episodes we've talked about so far, I think it's my favorite. It's good in a comedy way, and really good in like a character and like storytelling way. It's just a really good episode throughout, and I think it's the one that stuck with me the most out of this whole viewing so far. I don't know, just something about it was just really, really nice.
It's really good. I think it is maybe a close second or third to me, because the final one in this season is very striking in my memory.
The final one is also very good, but I think
we'll get there.
I think the character moments in this one specifically just stick out to me the most.
Yes, this one has a lot of emotional character moments that put context into the jokes.
There's a lot of heart in this episode that you don't see from a lot of shows that are like similar to it.
Yes, and
I wouldn't see a lot of shows tackling this same sort of story beat, even ignoring like, oh, it's a different time now than when this first came out. It's also just like this is a very serious topic that they tackled in both a really funny and serious way.
I would not be surprised if putting such like both comedic but also very like heartfelt and dramatic moments like this into the first season was part of why they were able to sell a second.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like the fact that it wasn't just funnies over and over and over again really hooked people in.
It's like you know that these characters are not great people, but you still care about them because they are trying.
Yes. And then there's episode 11. This is the Dale episode.
It sure is the Dale episode, huh? And what a first Dale episode it is.
It sure is.
So everything we talked about, like, oh, I really care about these characters and the heart they have, I do not feel in the slightest towards Dale after this.
Yeah, no, he hasn't earned it yet.
Dale is
he's a monster.
Shown his colors to be a complete asshole.
Yes.
He is the most maniacal monster I've ever seen. He's not as bad as Cotton in terms of like morals exactly, but when it comes to like really wanting to like get back at someone and treat them like horrible, Dale is unbeaten so far.
Dale is the guy who receives some sort of slight and overreacts by 1,000 times in his retaliation.
So brutal.
He goes too far every single time.
And it's not even like, oh, you go a little bit too far with your comment. You like, oh, I nudged you at like by accident while walking by you, and you respond by hitting me with a fucking gun.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like as someone who goes too far, you push them, they maybe like shove you to the ground. Someone who goes a little bit too far beyond that, maybe punches you too hard. Dale gets in his car and comes screaming at you at 65 miles an hour.
It's so... I didn't remember... I kind of remember this episode when I started watching it, but I couldn't remember what the exact conflict was. I knew that like the lawn and the fire ants were involved. I couldn't remember how we got from point A to point B, and when it happened, I was like, "Oh my fucking god!"
Like that's it.
This is how it happens. Holy shit!
Yep.
But I guess to pull it back a little bit before we get too deep into it,
it's nearly Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah, it's a whole episode about being nearly Cinco de Mayo, and there's a big block party about to happen.
And one of those big block party features is who's got the best lawn, baby.
And Hank usually wins, apparently.
Yes, because he God, by God, he cares about his lawn more than others.
He sure does love that grass.
And Dale, in particular, has shown that he doesn't care about his lawn because it is like... It is a very invasive weed, mostly, and also used car parts.
Well, so the conflict kind of starts between Con and Hank, that they're comparing lawns, and Con's lawn is actually really nice.
Yeah, because Con is the same kind of person as Hank at the end of the day, really.
Yeah, and Hank's lawn is kind of trailing behind this year for some reason.
Yep.
And they're kind of having a spat about it out on the front like alleyway.
Yeah, they're having their rivalry.
and Khan's like, oh, your lawn would bring down my the value of my house. And Dale comes over and he's like, as if anyone's bringing down the value, and he pauses and you're like, oh god, here comes the racism. It's me.
It's me.
It's like, oh, all right, not a bad subversion. All right, pretty good joke.
Says something along the lines of my yard's just untrimmed ragweed and broken car parts.
Yeah.
If anyone else is doing this neighborhood good, it's our good buddy Hank.
It's another one of those episodes that on the outside, if I just told you it's an episode about Hank's lawn, you would think, oh, that sounds really mundane and boring. But it's how they deal with it that makes it really interesting and funny. It's still really mundane, but by God, do they find a way to just put the cinder block on the gas pedal.
Yes. And I think this is also one of the first examples where the A plot and the B plot overlap like significantly.
Yeah, there's technically two plots going on, but they basically are interchangeable at that points.
Yeah. Hank's is about his lawn. Peggy's is about being the person who's managing the Cinco de Mayo party. So she is, while supportive of Hank, very distracted with her own business.
Did you hear? So there's a point where Hank's trying to figure out what to do with his lawn, and they eventually decide to get a bunch of lawn stuff from like the equivalent of Home Depot and do a transplant of it. But she's on the phone talking about like what to make, like what everyone's making for food.
Oh, that's right. I wrote that down as a clip. Or as a quote.
Do you remember what food she said she like pronounced just absolutely horribly?
You cannot make an authentic guacamole out of lima beans and Ritz crackers.
See, exactly, but the way she said it was guacamole.
Yeah, it's guacamole.
It's like, oh my god, here we go.
It's like, oh, you are in charge of Cinco de Mayo and you cannot pronounce, you probably can't pronounce tortilla correctly.
Well, that's another one of the running jokes throughout the whole series is Peggy thinking she could speak perfect Spanish.
That's right, like, I remember that.
Ugh, she gets bad with it.
Oh, yeah.
Guacamole is probably one of the worst ones so far.
But also, who's worse, the person pronouncing it guacamole or the person who's trying to make a substitute out of lima beans and crackers?
I don't know, but Peggy also says that Swiss cheese isn't American.
Yeah, please tell Boomhauer not to bring Swiss cheese because it's American. I want some... What was it? She said Monterey Jack really
something
wrong?
Something like that, yeah. Something like that. It's like, here comes the white again.
If I pull that clip again, I'll put it in the podcast right here.
The white people are trying to cook again.
Yep. Call Min, she'll fix it.
Yeah, exactly. She'll throw some nutmeg onto that guacamole and fix it.
And by God, that guacamole, it'll be killer after that. All it needs is nutmeg.
So Hank transplants this like brand new, really expensive turf and grass onto his old grass, and it looks really nice. It's super plush.
It's
Luann's
definitely
like
gonna win.
Around on it. Yeah, Luann's like rolling around on it. It's definitely gonna win the block party.
Yeah.
Even Khan's like, yeah, you win. All right, I concede.
Yeah.
He makes a comment like, yeah, next time we'll compare income.
He goes inside his house. Calls for, I don't remember what he calls Khan Jr. to do, but he calls for Min to get his tax returns.
Yeah.
Also, this is also after Luann somehow rolls herself into Khan's yard to roll around in his grass accidentally.
Exactly. Well, because she's just so enamored by the softness of the grass.
Yeah.
But what happens is so Dale has the extermination business, and he's been
Hank's main guy.
Yeah, he's been putting insecticides into Hank's grass to make sure there was no pests or anything for a long time.
Yeah.
And everyone starts saying, like, hey, well, maybe the reason this year your lawn wasn't so good is because of all the bug spray.
Yeah, maybe you should ease up on that.
Hank's like, okay, maybe I'll just go without this time for the sake of the block party.
And as far as anyone's concerned, he does tell this to Dale very calmly and very gently.
Yeah, he's just like, I don't want you to spray my lawn right now.
Just not right now.
Yeah, he's like.
I think I'm gonna skip it.
Yeah, he's like, I'm just gonna skip it. I don't want you to spray my lawn.
Yeah.
And Dale's kind of being a little too insistent about his acting like they're breaking up a relationship.
Yes.
Which is really funny.
I wrote a note down in the process of this conversation. Dale mentions L. Ron Hubbard, and I'm reminded that was relevant back then.
Yeah, that's right. He said, like, this is the stuff that killed L. Ron Hubbard or something like that.
Yeah. But they have their little tiff, and it's far more Dale's tiff than it is Hank's.
Well, so Dale first comes in saying he lost business from someone else, like he doesn't
Yes.
have another client lost him. So he's like begging him to do it, and Dale hits him with this line. He says, "I need to make up the income. I'll do it for free."
Yes.
And it's like that is the perfect encapsulation of Dale's like I wouldn't say stupidity.
Eccentricities.
Yes, exactly.
And it's made even funnier knowing later on that Hank was only paying him $2 a week to do it in the first place.
And he was gonna give him a raise of $250.
Yeah. That's all he wanted. It's like, how do you pay your bills, Dale? Oh, wait, you don't pay your bills. You don't pay taxes, do you?
Oh, you don't. Oh, the government hates this guy.
Yeah. But, like, it's... my God, it's... They have this conversation, they have this little tiff, and eventually, Dale is trying to, express how good and safe his chemicals are.
Right, and how it's not killing the lawn. He just wants to spray the lawn so badly to help.
He is so good at this. He is the expert exterminator, and I have a quote here. I have personally taste tested every household insecticide, period.
Yeah.
I have read a book, period.
Yeah.
And I've written after that explains your entire character.
That is a perfect way to just sum up how you think you know everything.
My next line is, Dale's a moron.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, as he is politely declined repeatedly to the point that he is saving face by pretending to spray chemicals on the lawn, even
Right.
after Hank has asked him not to do that.
So they go back to this like the hardware store and more stuff happens. They wrote down here while they were there, Hank was looking at like a hoe for his yard, and Peggy responds as she walks away. Why are men so attracted to hoes?
Oh, this was before he got the sod for his yard.
That was before. That was before they got the sod and
Yeah.
stuff. But afterwards, Dale comes up. He's like, "Oh, congrats on the new yard. It looks great. It looks beautiful. You're definitely gonna win it." And he shakes his hand. No hard feelings.
Yep.
And I forget what happens to distract Hank, but Dale goes to walk on the grass, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh, he's just seeing what the grass is like, and he shakes out his jeans
And out from his pant leg
like a psychopath.
comes a slew of fire ants and at least a couple of queens.
Yeah, like one or two queens and a bunch of fire ants, and they've been let loose into the yard.
Yes.
And as he starts to walk away, he goes, "Ouch!" He just
He just starts limping away because he's an idiot.
because he's been getting the shit bit out of him by fire ants. And then we wake up the next morning, and there's a massive fire ant hole on his yard now, which is basically the rest of the episode's dilemma.
Yes.
They
They
one
get
thing
an-
I noted.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to carry on. They get an eco-friendly solution.
That was the next thing I noted was just how brutal that solution was.
I mean, it's a thing.
I know it is. I looked it up afterwards that it's a real thing, and I was just like, God damn, it is probably a very effective, but holy shit, brutal thing if you think about it. Like
That is something that a lot of Texas people watching King of the Hill in 1997 first learned that thing is real. This is the instance where a lot of people learned something about nature.
And it's just it's like just being able to just set up a dome and let that kind of thing happen where like for context, they're like these flies that have stingers that inject like
Larva.
maggot larva into
Yeah.
the head of like
An ant.
a fire ant. And essentially the maggot grows and basically dislocates the head from the body.
It eats the brain, and as it pops out, it separates the head from the body.
It's so fucking gruesome and vile. Like they show like little IKEA diagrams of it happening in like the instruction manual.
Yeah.
It's like holy shit, this is one of the craziest things I've ever seen. It's like, oh my god, what do you mean this is real?
Yep.
And of course Bobby and Joseph are like, oh, we're gonna collect the heads afterwards.
As Bobby
For
is
some reason.
accidentally lasering them with a magnifying glass.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that he
actually
wants
like-
to keep them.
He's like, oh, what a painful way to go, and he keeps magnifying them and just nuking them.
Yep.
But
He tucks
as
a
a
few
part
of
of,
them
like-
up in a bag.
yeah, as a part of like a B/C plot, he puts them in like a chip bag, a couple of them, and he brings them inside into like this little bowl, I guess. It looked like a bowl on top of like a flashlight to me.
It looked like a bubblegum dispenser.
Oh, it's a better way to put it.
Like a miniature bubblegum dispenser with no cap.
Yeah, and he saved like a queen and a bunch of fire ants.
Dumped some dirt in there, and he made himself a little ant farm. It's very cute.
Yeah, and so they go about their day. Hank's trying to figure out letting the flies do their thing at night while they're eating dinner, and Bobby goes into his room.
Yes, and he's talking with Joseph.
He's talking with Joseph, and then Joseph leaves, right?
Joseph mentions that they communicate through like smelling weird.
Right.
And then Joseph leaves.
And then Bobby takes a huge whiff of the bowl.
And he walks away because it doesn't like seem like anything. And then all of a sudden, he jolts awake.
He's just taken over by the whiff of the queen.
And the C plot becomes that Bobby has ant fever.
He has ant fever. He's been mind controlled by the fire ants, and it is like
he now serves the queen.
I just put damn Bobby high on ants.
Yeah, that's it.
That is a Dracula flow. We're smoking fire ants.
Yeah. You went full Dracula on that one.
We're smoking unfiltered fire ants.
Yes.
But yeah.
So that happens. Of course, Dale sabotages the eco-friendly, ant solution.
Yeah.
And things get worse over the coming day.
A dozen, and then Hank drives over the anthill with his mower.
Yes.
Thinking that's just the end of it, and then he wakes up the next day.
And there's like 20.
Like, so many anthills all over the place. Like, holy shit, that's so many anthills to pop up overnight.
Yeah. Unreasonable amount for any one human to ever handle.
And of course, Dale is right there to swoop in and save the day, like a good friend.
Yep. Well,
a very good friend.
Not quite.
No, a good friend. He's a good friend. He was there to help.
No. He had to be convinced, remember?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Here I was trying to make a joke, and no, that's right. He was still a prick.
He was still a prick. He had become the main character because the whole point in the first place was that everyone wanted to say that Dale doesn't know how to take care of a lawn. He doesn't know how his chemicals work, despite the fact that he's very good at exterminating. So everyone trusts Hank's word on how to take care of a lawn. Dale took that personally.
Right.
But now that Hank's lawn is shit, Boomhauer and Bill have decided that Dale is the one who's smart, so they've been hanging out behind...
They very quickly changed allegiances, like super fast.
Behind Hank's back. So he goes to find them at Dale's house, where he's sitting on an industrial, sized drum of insecticide.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they have this little back and forth where Hank has to convince Dale to help. And at first it's like, I'll pay you $2. Do it for a friend. Do it for a friend who's apologizing for, treating you badly. Dale reveals, I was just holding out for $2.50.
Yeah, yeah. I wrote down in my notes after this, because he was holding out for $2.50, but we cut to Peggy and why can't I think of Dale's wife's name?
I can't remember.
Why can't I think of her name? Oh my god.
I'll look it up.
Anyway, we cut to the two of them in their in Dale's kitchen. Nancy, thank you. Peggy and Nancy are in Dale's kitchen because for some reason Peggy ran out of sugar, and it turns out Bobby, in his high fire ant
in service of the queen,
took all the sugar from inside of their house and gave it to the queen
by holding it in his mouth and spitting it into the ant farm.
Yeah. So she's over there getting some sugar, and Nancy's run out of sugar, but there's some in the basement. And so Peggy's like, I'll go get it, and she starts going down to the basement. And I wrote down in my note, as she opens up the door to the basement, and we see Peggy's silhouette in the light. I wrote down, Peggy has an almost identical silhouette to Butthead. In that moment, she looks just like Butthead's silhouette, and I'm like, oh, that is unfavorable to Peggy.
God, I actually have a note from this moment too, and it just reads, Peggy's hair looks like a curled fist.
Yeah, exactly. In that moment when you only have the silhouette of the body, you know it's Peggy, but if you just look at it for out of the corner of your eye, you could be confused thinking that Butthead is suddenly coming down the stairs.
Yeah. But she comes down the stairs and she's looking around for sugar. She doesn't turn on a light for some reason.
And for some reason, Dale, in his insanity, has just kept an entire model scale of the Hill House with multiple notes of when he was going to drop the fire ants and like this detailed list of how he was going to do this whole plot.
Dale has Ocean's 11 dropping fire ants into his best friend's yard.
And it's like, for someone who's so obsessed with like people surveilling him and getting caught and stuff like that, you'd think like the moment the fire ants were down, he would have torn it all down.
Yeah.
And it's funnier that he wasn't, because he keeps trying to get out, because Dale is down there trying to confront her or like pretend like she didn't see it. And his whole thing is like, my testimony can't be trusted. I can't be held accountable because I'm not trustworthy.
Yeah. He's like, well, I'm gonna tell him anyway.
It's like, well, you know what? He has a point, because he's a fucking psychopath, and I don't trust him. However,
I do.
This
have
evidence
to tell
is
Hank.
irrefutable.
Yeah. What are you doing with all these jars of fire ants? They're silkworms.
This is they're silkworms.
Yeah.
This is right after, though, Hank has convinced Dale to help him, and he's basically carpet bombing his entire yard with this extremely powerful insecticide. And
Yes.
at the end of it, he's basically destroyed his lawn and turned it into sand and mud.
Overnight, all of the grass dies. It's just dirt.
Yeah, it is just a pile of dirt
It
that
is
eventually becomes mud.
It is a yard of dirt filled with dead anthills. Like, the anthills aren't gone, just the grass is gone, but all the ants are dead.
It's a big lumpy yard.
Yeah. And
so
and he is depressed. I should note that he started walking barefoot in his yard when he got the new plush grass, even with the fire ants. Even now, when the grass is gone, he is still walking barefoot in his yard.
It's just the depression knowing what it used to feel like.
Yep, he sets up a beach chair in his front yard to sit in, and then the fucking sprinklers activate.
Sprinklers come on.
Turn it all to
he
mud.
starts sinking into the mud. But then
Peggy finds this out about Dale, and of course she goes back home to tell him. He's still in the mud, by the way.
He's just sitting in the mud.
Uh-huh. Barefoot.
And then eventually, Peggy tells Hank, and Hank goes ballistic.
Mm-hmm. He spots Dale leaving his house.
Off the handle. Yeah.
It chases him down, and they do this fucking Looney Tunes skit running around Dale's exterminator truck.
Because Dale's trying to get into his van, but he fucks it up.
Mm-hmm.
So Hank's like chasing him around the van, and Dale's like looking underneath it like he's gonna try and crawl under it, and he's yelling like, "You made me do it. You know what I'm like. You know how crazy I get."
Yeah, you can't trust me. You know I'm like this.
Yeah.
And then all of the sudden, C-plot wraps up. Right?
Oh, C-plot.
As Bobby, in the utmost degree of his anthill fever, arrives, having received commands from the Queen to dump them out into an anthill in the alley.
Yeah.
Where they promptly swarm him, and a fire ant-covered Bobby starts, like, snowman walking up to Hank and Dale.
We see, like, through his eyes at one point, like, first person view through Bobby's eyes.
It's
and we
just,
see, like, ants crawling over his eye. It's so fucked up.
Yeah. He is coated in these masses of red. And this is during Hank and Dale's, like, situation.
Yeah,
Hank is fucking panicking, and Dale decides, I know what to do.
That's right.
Dale steps up to the plate, for no reason other than, you know, like, this isn't even to redeem himself. He's just doing this because he knows what to do.
He knows what to do.
He strides up to Bobby and extends a hand and said, "Boy, take my hand. They'll leave you."
They'll come to me, and the fire ants just start crawling all over Dale. Like, they've been waiting 15 years.
They've been waiting 15 years for this moment. They crawl all over him, and they bite the shit out of him in every possible way.
They just annihilate him with bites.
But they migrate off of Bobby, who is completely unharmed.
And so Dale falls over, the fire ants scatter, and Dale is, like, unconscious.
Yes.
He's like, and Hank falls to the ground, thinks Dale is dead.
My best friend.
You saved my boy, and I guess that makes us even for the grass. It's like, of course that makes us even.
Yeah. He just coughs up a few ants, is like, all right.
He's like, did anyone put anything in me while I was unconscious?
Like, you're alive. Answer the question.
He's like, answer the question.
And of course, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that it's like, this episode doesn't make a good job of making Dale look like a likable character, but it makes him into a funny character.
It expresses some things about him that were a little unsure previously.
Yeah, like it reinforces how much of a psychopath he is, but it's in a different way than Cotton, where Cotton is like unlikable. Dale is unlikable, but he's at least mostly harmless and funny.
Dale is combustibly insecure,
Yes.
prone to taking extreme actions when he himself feels threatened, even on a superficial level. Cotton is aggressive.
Cotton is the equivalent of a sledgehammer, and Dale is the equivalent of like a regular ball peen hammer, like you would use just on a wall.
Yeah.
Like he's not that dangerous, but if you set him in the right way, he can cause some damage.
In the way that I say that Hank is, I think Dale's primary characteristic is that he's reactionary.
Yes.
Cotton is very straightforward, aggressive, but Dale is weird, but doesn't do anything of his own accord. He only does it when he feels threatened.
Right.
The problem is that he feels threatened all the time.
He is constantly in a state of panic and fear.
Yes.
Is it? No, it's the next episode. I was looking at my notes. I was trying to remember something, but it was about the next episode.
The next scene is the ending of the B plot.
Yeah. Where the block party starts.
Yes, it's Cinco de Mayo. Peggy's looking good, not gonna lie.
She pulled off that dress pretty well.
Yeah. And she invites Hank out for some margaritas.
He gets pissed off the way
it's
she pronounced
margaritas.
And as she's heading outside, she's getting ready to go. Did someone ring the doorbell? I can't remember.
What's that? There's someone at the door.
Yeah, it's the entire like neighborhood of the named characters, at least.
Yeah, bringing out like a 2x2 like square lump of grass from each of their yards to help Hank repair his yard.
And it was, but the way they frame it, they made it seem like they were just saving these just in case, like in case they needed it.
Yeah.
And did you hear what Bill said when he gave his?
I was saving this for someone special, but I guess she's not coming back.
Yeah.
Did you catch the little special jingle that was going on behind all of this?
No, what was it? I remember there was a jingle, but I don't remember what it was.
You don't recall the background noise? It doesn't sound familiar?
I don't think so. What was it?
It's fucking Hark the Herald Angels Sing.
Oh my god, you're right.
It's
you're
Christmas
right.
music on a Cinco de Mayo block party as they're delivering
you're right.
squares of sod to him and laying them in his hand.
I did remember that. You're right. You're right.
It's so fucking funny. I heard that music in the background of the scene and thought back to fucking Peanuts Christmas.
Yeah,
Like, hold on a minute.
Like
It's May.
It's Christmas in Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah.
Yay.
But did you remember what Dale said when he delivered his square of grass?
Fuck, what did he say? There were so many. Each one of them said something, but I didn't write them all down.
He said I exterminated them myself. I didn't know chemicals. I squished every bug by hand. Also, he's still covered in bug bites.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
That's the continuity I've come to expect.
Yeah. And all of this is lovely. You know, they have their great Cinco de Mayo. Hank's spirits are lifted. And the credits scene is him doing laps in his lawnmower over his fresh yard.
His 4x4 patch of sod.
Yeah, it's like maybe 20 feet of grass in this gigantic pit of dirt. But he's just doing circles around it.
It's again, like the Boggle episode, it's a mundane topic that they take an absurd idea and run with it to a way that still feels believable. Like Dale's whole plan is so stupid and crazy, but it's not unfeasible, I guess you could say. Like it's not totally unbelievable that someone psychopathic enough could have just fire ants ready to go to do that.
If this came from any other character, I would expect equal build up for their character the way that Dale does, because it is
right.
It is impossible to imagine anyone else doing this, but Dale.
I could see someone like Bill doing it as like, oh, I can help, like as this weird wet cat sort of way of like, I'll help you.
I don't see anyone else building the diorama in the basement and planning it out.
That whole aspect, no. Just
Yeah.
the fucking...
I can imagine
the creating
Bill
of the model.
Yeah, I can imagine Bill, like, sticking some bugs in his pants and shaking them out, thinking that he's helping. Yeah.
Right,
but, like,
right.
Dale's entire situation is dependent on every piece working correctly. He is a mastermind with, like... he's a mastermind with no intelligence score.
Yeah. it's just I appreciate this episode for kind of showing a more absurd side to the side characters. Because even Bill and Boomhauer are a little bit kind of fucked up and crazy in this one.
Yeah, especially with how quickly they change allegiances.
Right, and it shows that, like, I think it shows the way that, like, all of these characters are really not perfect in the slightest.
Yeah.
But the way they go about their mundane lives kind of forces them all to still be friends at the end of the day.
Really, the surprising part is that they have been childhood friends and have stayed that way. Because by God, they're all awful to each other.
I think, again, the only one that's not wholly awful so far that we know about is, like, Boomhauer.
Yeah.
He's, like, still the questionable element.
Yeah.
He just kind of seems like the cool dude that, you know, has, like, a lot of lady friends.
Yeah, he's a little bit insensitive at times, but he's not the worst.
Right.
And that's the worst it gets, so whatever.
Yeah. And it's like, so far, we've had pretty good episodes that explore, like, character dynamics and stuff like that, but we haven't had a whole lot of, like I would say this is the first moment where there was, like, really big conflict between two characters.
Yes.
And it's kind of nice that there hasn't been a lot of that, just putting characters, like, at odds with each other.
I think the only other time we've had that happen was with Luann.
Yeah. And even then, that was still kind of like a last-minute thing.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at my notes, trying to see if there's anything else I want to say about this one before we move on to the last one.
Last one's a doozy.
There's a lot to talk about with the last one.
Holy yeah.
Shit. I think it's good, but there's a lot.
There's a lot.
I might as well just get into it. I think it's funny that my first note about episode 12 is just I wrote down the name of the episode.
Yep.
Being Plastic White Female. I was like, wow, that certainly sets the tone out the gate, I think.
That is a phrase that is either a King of the Hill episode or a Gorillaz song.
Exactly. I think you could probably make a whole game out of that.
Oh, absolutely.
Gorillaz or King of the Hill.
My first note is Jonathan saying, "I'm going to have a party." Bobby saying, "Can I come?" And Jonathan just saying, "I guess." Like, you guys are best friends.
My first note is that there's Star Trek roleplay at the very start of the episode.
Yes, there's Star Trek roleplay, and they're just roleplaying to hawk loogies at cars under an overpass.
Yeah, they're pretending that the loogies that they're spitting down onto cars underneath them are photon torpedoes.
Yeah. The next note I have is, "Oh fuck, Luann's beauty school is actually hardcore." Like,
honestly, that teacher is so mean. The way that they've portrayed that teacher, it's like she's like got it out for him. Like, holy shit.
Yeah, and that becomes relevant later on. But also, like, previously, her homework has been 8 hours of beauty sleep and write a paper about it. Or, I gotta learn how to braid hair in a certain way. And in here, they're talking about, like mechanical dynamics of various cosmetics. And it's like, holy shit. Luann, you haven't been listening at all.
It was like one of the textbook questions, like, if a train is going this direction with the talking about, like, nail polish or something like that, like having to apply nail polish while a train is moving. It was like what the fuck kind of beauty school questions are these? I don't know. It's just the way that they portrayed the beauty school is like, early on it's like, just a regular beauty school, and now they're like, okay, now we actually have to build this out and make it something kind of funny. So they've just made it so that Luann is the only one that, like, actively is either failing or in the process of being the worst at the school.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like all previous iterations were definitely like, oh, she's in the kind of beauty school where if you don't apply makeup, you don't apply lipstick correctly, you're failing, and that's all it is. But she's just really fucking bad at it. No, these are like fucking chemists and shit. Yeah. It's insane. And that plays into the end of it all, but, you know, the whole crux is she's got a final coming up, and that involves...
She has this fake mannequin head with a obviously like a wig on it, and she has to style it on her own, and she only has one chance at it to really show off everything that she's learned in the process of beauty school.
Everything she's learned in the last year.
Yeah, in the last year. So the whole crux of the episode is now she has to take care of this head and style it perfectly as her final exam.
Yes, and she only gets one shot.
So she's been trying to practice on, like, she was trying to practice doing highlights on Connie's hair. She was she, she tried to style Peggy's hair,
Yep.
which I wrote down in my notes, Super Saiyan Peggy.
Yeah, I had the same.
She has the full Vegeta fade going on. It's beautiful.
Yeah. She's just a widow's peak away.
And she was trying to get Hank to cut his hair, because apparently it's been a week since his haircut and it needs a little bit of a trim.
Yeah, because that's how frequently he does his, I guess.
He gets dissuaded from it after seeing Peggy's amazing power.
Yes.
And she tries to convince him to dye his hair instead.
And he won't do it.
And he's like, oh, I'm a man, I don't dye my hair. And she tries to, the best appeal I've ever seen of, well, Ronald Reagan dyed his hair.
Yeah.
It's like...
Even he did. And it's like, well, if he did it for any reason, it was to show one up on the commies.
Oh, yeah, look strong to the It's like, that was a good idea, Luann, to appeal to the Reagan crowd.
Yeah, Luann, you came so close. Unfortunately, you are just bad enough at this.
Just so bad.
The funniest thing was the very obvious joke shortly after of them talking about the boy-girl party that Joseph is going to have at Dale's house. His father. Wink.
His father.
And they're talking about, how normal it is for their age and everything, and whether or not Bobby will go. And Dale makes sure to mention there's not going to be any hanky-panky at my house shortly after his wife gets out of John Redcorn's car, goes inside,
and runs inside,
grabs her purse, and then comes out and gets back in the car with John Redcorn.
Well, because they keep talking about it, and I wrote down in here, not the Redcorn Riz.
Yes. It's like it happens repeatedly, and then also Boomhauer, Bill, and Hank.
And they all look at each other like, oh, okay.
Like, they know.
They know.
But him saying there's not going to be any hanky-panky at my house, from what I understand, is is a bit of a foreshadowing moment for the future.
Yeah. But I want to bring something up to you. When you were like in middle school into high school, was there ever a concern for your parents? Like, I don't know how many parties you went to. I didn't go to a whole lot, but I've been to like a few when I was growing up. Was there ever the concern of like, oh, you're going to a party with both boys and girls?
I didn't go to parties.
That's fair. I was just curious because did you ever? Okay, how about this? Was there ever a concern from your parents of going to like a school function with like boys and girls? Together? Not
really. I know a lot of kids who did, but my parents were pretty progressive about that.
That's fair. I was similar. Like the most I ever had was like my parents were very cautious about like, oh, my friends had like I was like 13 and my friends had like Halo and GTA at their house, and they didn't necessarily want me playing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Which I get it. But I never had the concern of like, I had boys and girls at my birthday parties all the time. I hung out with boys and girls all the time whenever I would go to friends' houses. And it's like, I never felt that concern. So I was kind of, it felt weirdly like of its time to have that concern be like the main plot for the story.
Yes, I think that's fair.
I was just curious to see if you had any sort of like experience similar to this. Cause it was hard for me to be like, well, what's the big deal necessarily?
By the time I was Bobby's age, it was the mid to late 2000s, and I think things had changed a lot. But this is 1997, probably presumed to be like based slightly earlier.
Well, it's also the region that the story takes place in.
Yes, and that's suburban Texas.
Yeah,
and that's a very different deal. I think Bobby has something that I didn't, in that his parents aren't sure that he's gay. And boy, howdy, the fears that a parent has about whether or not, your child will come back from a boy-girl party with a pregnancy, those go way down when they think you're gay.
It was definitely, it was surprising, but we got a trilogy of the bigotry episodes coming in on this episode. Because holy shit, does Hank have some sneak lines about Bobby's possible sexuality in this episode. Holy shit.
And with a lot of fear, too.
Oh, yeah.
But like they're discussing all these things, and Hank is trying to make a plea to Bobby, who does not want to go because he's nervous.
Yeah, he doesn't really want to go. He's nervous. He doesn't really care that much at first.
Hank says that when he was Bobby's age, they called him Ricardo Montalban.
Like the actor,
who is very, very handsome, by the way. I looked him up.
Oh yeah, he's very handsome.
But also, I cannot imagine a world in which this box-headed freak Hank Hill looks even remotely attractive like that.
Well, I guess when you're like the star football player, you kind of get over the jar-headed look and just go like, all right, he's just athletic and cool.
Yeah, in this same conversation, Bobby has this killer line, "What if I get felt up?" I want to briefly remind us all that we had "What if the other kids think I'm a slut?" earlier in the season.
Yeah.
Bobby
Bobby
is
has some of the
very
best. Yeah, he has some of the best, like, serious, like, genuine lines that you wouldn't expect.
he's very aware of sex as a concept, but not what it means for him. And that's the crux of this episode.
Apparently Bobby said chlamydia at some point in this
Yes.
episode, because I wrote down Bobby saying chlamydia is funny.
Yes.
That's just the note I wrote.
Yeah, they were talking about something, and
Probably something to do with the
they were
white
talking
girl
about
party.
cooties.
That's right.
And he's like, "Oh, it's something you get when, boys and girls get close enough and they're not
Like
careful."
chlamydia.
Like chlamydia? Oh,
That's
Bobby.
right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I was like, when did he say chlamydia? That's right.
Yeah.
Do you remember his fucking nightmare in, like, the school?
Yes.
Oh my god, that was a crazy sequence.
I remember having a nightmare kind of like that when I was young.
Yeah, you had a nightmare of, like, teenage girls surrounding you with triple boobs spinning in place on their chest.
I mean, maybe not every feature, but
Yeah.
I definitely made note of that.
Because that was what I was distraught. I was like, what do you mean they just have, like, 3 of them spinning around on their torso like they're,
By
like...
God, they're all jugglers.
Oh my god. Oy vey.
I don't remember if this happens before or after the nightmare, but he talks to Khan Jr. about that.
I think it's right after.
Yeah, and she pulls out the line, "My dad won't let me be around boys until I'm married." Holy shit.
And they're getting ready to go, and she's like, "Oh, you want to go to lunch?" And he picks up, because he drops, like, his lunchbox and everything.
Yeah.
Did you see what his lunchbox was of?
No.
So he has, like, one of those, like, metal lunchboxes that has, like,
Yeah,
the
he's a
print of some
character
pop
lunchbox.
culture. Yeah, he has a character lunchbox. And, most boys would probably pick, like, like a superhero or a cartoon character, something like that.
Uh-huh.
I had to rewind to make sure I saw it right. I did. He has a lunchbox of Mrs. Doubtfire.
Oh my God.
It's like a picture of, like, the cover of Mrs. Doubtfire on his lunchbox.
That's so fucking funny.
And it's not even, there's no attention brought to it other than him putting it back in his locker, so you can see that it's a Mrs. Doubtfire lunchbox. But it's like
Of all the characters.
It's such a quick moment that you can miss if you're not paying attention to it.
And I did.
And
He talks about Mrs. Doubtfire in an earlier episode. This is just something he's into.
Yeah, that explains a lot why his parents might think he's gay. Oh no.
Yeah, that actually, actually.
Oh, it's all coming together. But yeah, it's like just this really shitty drawn, like, Mrs. Doubtfire cover art on the lunchbox. It's so funny.
It's so funny. If this podcast reaches, I don't know, 5 years, we'll print Mrs. Doubtfire lunchboxes
Oh my god.
to celebrate. You remember if anything happens between that and when the head comes home?
Well, no, because the head comes home pretty early. The head's been there, but Bobby starts, like, obsessing over it.
No. See, there was the earlier school shot where she's, like, nearly failing, and then the heads get wheeled out
Oh, that's
after
right.
Bobby's had his fears exacerbated by the nightmare.
No, I think you're right. There hasn't... Between that and the head coming... I don't think there's much between. I think just the heads are brought out.
I think he comes
then-
home to see that.
He
From
comes
school.
home and he's like, I'm not really interested in girls, I think is what he says. Something like
Yeah,
that.
something like that. They
Like,
have
he's
that
not
whole
really
thing.
interested in the party.
And then
And
Luann
then
brings the head out, and he goes goo-goo over it.
Goes crazy over this fake, like, lady head.
And
To the point where, like, he's like watching her brush it in the middle of the night, and, like...
see, that's the thing. When he spies the head and changes his mind suddenly, I wrote down, because I was misinterpreting the moment, "Oh, Bobby likes older women."
Yeah,
It's like,
I get it.
maybe Bobby is like a MILF chaser, right? Because, like, everyone else around him is like a teenage girl, maybe, and he's scared of them. Maybe he likes women.
Bobby Hill, MILF Hunter.
We'll make that a shirt. My next note is sort of. As I see that he is becoming fascinated with this head as an object, not as, like, a perceived older woman.
Right. But then he, like, eventually he brings it, like, to his room, And no,
No,
wasn't it
first,
like they
first he engineers a moment alone with it.
Right. And then like the next morning they're at breakfast or something, and Luann spots like the red hair from the doll on his shirt.
Okay, hold on. Before we get there, like,
Yeah.
there's the scene where Luann is like brushing it, and he's been watching the head for a little bit.
Right. There's a lot in this episode, so it's really hard to remember like some of the smaller details.
I only bring this up because I have additional material that I'll throw up. But
yeah, go for it.
Peggy has some plans with Bobby to go to like the mall or something, and Luann is invited along, and Bobby notices his moment, right? And he lies his way out of going by saying, "Oh, there's an after-school special about Jesus," and Peggy's like, "Well, you can't miss that. Come on, Luann." And while he's home alone, Bobby jams a chair under the door, closes the blinds, and decides to wine and dine the head a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. I wrote that down.
Brings the head into the living room, offers her up a soda or something. You know, they have a little bit of a date. I think this is the one where he practices dancing a little bit.
Yeah, because isn't it like, wouldn't it be nice is playing?
Something like that. But like they do a little montage, and he's doing his thing, and it's all in this one day. And he brought out 2 sodas. And he says, "Sorry, they're not diet." And you know, things go on, and he's having a great time with his head. And Luann and Peggy come home. Right?
Yep.
And he rushes to like try and sort of hide the evidence a little bit.
A little bit. Chugs both of them.
He chugs both of them. The point I want to bring up is that there's another animation error, maybe.
Oh, is there?
Ding, ding, ding. Where he's very clearly drinking like a grape soda in all shots, except for this one that's over his shoulder, where he is drinking something that is the same shape and color as the beers that the men drink.
Yeah. I noticed that, but I just kind of wrote it off at first. Yeah.
And in the next scene, or not the next scene, in the next frame where he's like sitting down, they're both like grape sodas again.
That's right. I did see that. I guess it just didn't register in my head. Like, oh yeah, I guess it's just like a similar type of can.
I have to wonder if, like, in an earlier edit of the episode, Bobby gets himself in the head a beer.
Maybe.
And this is the only like scene where they didn't correct it.
Could be because that's
that's the same. That's the same setup as the beers that the men drink.
Yeah, it's almost the exact same like coloring and like the blue and red stripe on top.
Yeah, and the cream colored, you know, everything else. It's
yeah.
Bobby's, you know, knocking back a cold one with a plastic head.
That's either someone got the wrong reference sheet and just did that can instead of the new one that they did for this scene specifically, or like you said, that they repurposed it to be like the grape soda instead of the beer at the last second and forgot this frame.
Yeah, I think that might be the case to make it more palatable to Fox, maybe.
Yeah, I imagine.
Regardless, that was a funny moment that I noticed.
No, it's a really good one. I can't believe you caught that.
Yeah.
I mean, I caught it too, but I just didn't. It just didn't register to me that what was going on.
Yeah. The next scene the next note that I have is quite a ways forward after that. So if you, I think you were leading into the one where Luann finds a hair on Bobby's, you know, shirt.
Luann finds like
and assumes he has a girlfriend.
Yeah, Luann finds the hair on Bobby's shirt and like, oh, he's got a girlfriend, and Bobby starts freaking out, and of course Hank and Peggy are like, oh, it's nothing to be ashamed of. Or well, Peggy's like,
nervous. Hank is like, hey, I got a little Playboy.
And it's like, oh, good job. Like, there's nothing to be ashamed about. I had a bunch of girls when I was your age type thing.
Yeah.
And of course he's trying to hide it still.
Yeah.
And I forget what exactly happened next, but eventually we get to the point where Bobby sneaks the head into his room.
Before that, again, I want to point out that as they are like talking at the dinner table, Hank says, "I'm proud of you, Bobby," in the assumption that he has a girlfriend, and Bobby, in an effort to get away, says, "I'm proud of you too, Dad," and then just fucking leaves the table.
I think the more I'm looking at my notes, I think I was just so amused by this episode. A lot of my stuff is just like really like pointing out like small jokes as they're coming out.
Yeah.
Because like I have a line that just says "damn Dale," like as like ...
I mean,
because I
that's applicable at any moment.
Well, because I remember now, because like Luann was talking about how she needed to practice cutting hair and no one would help her, And Bill's like, well, we got a bunch of recruits on the
Oh yeah, we got new recruits on the
base.
base.
And if you want, we can help them. You can practice on them because when you're an army barber, and Dale just cuts in like, "Oh my God, Bill, nobody cares."
Yes.
And then the scene just ends.
But she does do it. She goes to the base.
Yeah, she goes to the base and gives them all like these crazy haircuts, and then Bill immediately shaves them down.
But she seems to do a good job too. It seems to actually help her. And then they get the military shave, and they all seem kind of happy to be able to help her.
Yeah, I mean, when you're in the military, like 18 years old, and you see this blonde girl, like
that's as good as you get for a while.
That's as good as you're gonna get for like 4 years.
Yeah, you hold on to that memory for a bit, you're gonna need it.
Exactly. But there's this montage with Bobby in the head where it's like playing "Wouldn't It Be Nice When We Were Older," that song.
Yes,
it's a really I have a specific connection to that song now because I saw a video. Do you know the meme, the kind of recent meme of I think it's like a Polish or a Russian dude picking up like a wombat and he's calling it Bobber?
No.
Have you never seen that? Fuck,
send it to me. I'll throw it in the podcast.
Well, specifically like this, it's this, like I sent a gift of you. It's this guy. It's guy like picking up this
I haven't
creature,
seen this. No.
and he's spinning it around. He's calling it like a beaver, and it's like actually like a wombat.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just this dude calling it a beaver, like he's spinning it around purposely, like sounding like a goober. But the reason I bring it up is because there was a meme edit to this video I saw pretty recently that makes me laugh every time I see it.
Uh-huh.
And I gotta see if I can find it. It's literally just this video with the "Wouldn't It Be Nice" song written like on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm like, oh, I gotta rush to find it. Fuck.
You could do it. I believe in you.
But regardless, he does this big montage with this song. I found it with this song playing, and it reminded me of this fucking video. It's gonna be kind of loud.
This is pretty good.
It's so wholesome, but it's really funny and cute with Bobby.
Yeah.
And it eventually it does lead to Bobby taking the head back to his room.
Yes.
I wrote down Bobby makes the craziest fucking face I've ever seen him make, because it's slowly leading up to the point where he's gonna try and practice kissing this mannequin head.
That's right. That's the thing. Is like he's doing really well practicing, his smooth moves on the head, and he's getting more confident in school until he realizes that kissing is going to happen at the party.
The first, because Joseph's like, wow, you're doing really, because he's talking to all the girls at school, he's being really confident, and all the girls are responding really well.
Yeah.
And Joseph's like, oh man, you're gonna have to, hopefully your lips won't hurt by the end of the night. He's like, what do you mean? From what?
We're gonna be playing spin the bottle. You're gonna be kissing. He's like, oh no.
And Bobby realizes he's gonna have to kiss someone, or supposedly, and so then has to practice kissing on the mannequin head.
And that leads to him bringing it to his room.
Bring it to his room. He makes this crazy face, which I gotta try and find again. But it's like the last couple seconds before he kisses it, and it's like his whole face scrunches with like I don't know how to describe it other than like this weird scrunched Giga Chad face.
I mean, he's getting there.
He's getting there, and so he kisses it.
Yes. Before he kisses it, by the way,
he's talking to it.
He's talking to it, and I also misinterpreted a moment again, where he goes in, he sets the head down on his bed, and he says,
Right.
Hey, I have something special tonight, and he holds up a bottle of ketchup, and in my mind, I'm thinking like, is that his replacement for like wine on a fancy dinner? Is he going to drink the ketchup? Forgetting entirely about spin the bottle. Later, he spins the ketchup bottle, and I think, oh, that makes much more sense. But I can't get the image out of my mind of Bobby in a fancy dinner, dressed up nice. He is dressed up nice for this thing in his room, by the way.
He's dressed up very nice.
Guzzling ketchup from the bottle. But yes, he does. He spins the bottle. He corrects it to point at the head. He leans in for a kiss.
Well, he's like talking to it all sensual, like, all right, let's do this type thing.
Yeah.
And as he's talking, like Peggy passes by. And
she overhears him.
She overhears them, and as he's kissing it, she opens the door,
thinking to find maybe a girl.
Right. And so they immediately turn to look at each other. Peggy screams, Bobby screams. I think Peggy screams like Bobby's name.
Yeah.
And then Peggy and Bobby just screams again.
Mm-hmm. It's just screaming back and forth until what I assume is a commercial break, and when we come back, it is her and Hank talking about what she saw,
Yeah.
and he almost doesn't believe it.
Yeah, he almost doesn't believe it, and then I think Bobby kind of like immediately like rats himself out in a sort of way.
I mean, he's not gonna lie.
He's not gonna lie about it. But also, I remember him blaming this partly on the Muppets.
Yes. Yeah.
He says it's like Peggy's fault for letting him watch those Muppets.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the Muppets have to do with this? Don't have to bring them into this. They didn't do anything wrong.
They talk about what to do, and Peggy's first decision is we're going to move to Berlin. They have a very progressive community, and, quote, German culture accepts all kinds of freaks.
Yeah, I called him a freak. That's right. I forgot to write that down, but I totally forgot to call him a freak.
Yeah, and Hank is explicitly not interested in moving to Berlin or deciding that his son is a freak yet, so they go and talk.
Well, they go and talk, and eventually it comes down to like, Bobby's like, I need it to help me like get more confident.
I need to learn how to kiss.
Right, he needs to learn how to kiss. And eventually Hank takes the head and puts it in the kitchen.
Yes. Locked in a cupboard.
Locked in a high up cupboard in the kitchen where Bobby can't really get to. And they kind of leave it at that for the night. And they go to bed. Turns out, like, middle of the night, Bobby, like, opens up one of the lower drawers and tries to stand on it to open up the cabinet.
Mm-hmm.
And he trips on it, it slams down, and Ladybird starts barking.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't see Hank yet. We don't hear anyone get up. He opens up the cabinet, and then we cut to
Hank making a real sour face in his room as he does hear the commotion.
He slides into frame like an old Hanna-Barbera, like, cartoon from, like, the 60s.
He is Scooby-Doo who just smelled a Scooby snack.
Yeah, it's such a funny set of frames. He just slowly slides into the screen like you just smell the nasty shit.
Yes. He goes into the kitchen and he catches Bobby red-handed.
Yeah. And he's like, this is a crutch, you can't be using this. And Bobby responds with, it's not a crutch, Dad, it's something I've come to rely on to get through life.
Yes. And Hank is adamant that Bobby can't have it and takes the head and walks out the door. I wrote the note, wait, Luann needs that.
I said, what the fuck, why punish Luann too?
Yeah. And they, everyone's waking up because, of course, the boys are loud.
The boys are freaking out. Hank is stomping off to his garage. And he turns on this big-ass, like, wood saw.
Yeah, he turns on the circular saw, and Bobby is screaming. Luann is barely lucid enough until she reaches the garage and watches as her finals required object is being, like, sawed in half by a very vengeful Hank.
From scalp down to throat, this thing is getting split in half down the middle.
Yeah. And she shrieks, and at that moment, he seems to remember, oh, right.
He makes this little fucking, like, oops face.
Yes.
It's so funny. There's, to go along with a lot of the weird animation errors and stuff like that, there's a lot of really funny expressions and just general face movements in this show.
Yes.
That a lot of other shows don't do. They let their characters be extremely expressive, and I really appreciate it.
Yes.
Because it adds a lot more to a scene when you can visibly see how angry or embarrassed or upset a character is rather than just a frowny face, you know what I mean?
Yeah, they have an exceptional sense of expression for this show.
You can tell when Hank gets pissed. You can visibly, like, feel it.
Yes, and you can visibly feel when he's embarrassed.
Oh, absolutely. They're very good at making sure you know, like, how much emotion this character is going through at any given moment.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, that involves Hank destroying Luann's final exam.
Yep. And, of course, what happens first?
Comeuppance and karma.
Okay, so the first thing that happens after that is Hank gets what was coming to him. Luann has lost her model head. So, of course, the person to stand in for her model head for her final was Hank himself.
Yes, so he had to go sit down and go be in the middle of all these mannequin heads as the only person that's actually...
The only living person.
Yeah, the only living person that is stuck to be, like, the model for Luann's hair. And the teacher comes over and examines it, basically just reams her about it. The sideburns are wrong. She starts drawing on Hank's head.
Yes, with the marker, eventually giving her the grade of F on the back of Hank's head.
For failure.
Yeah, and she chews Luann a little bit more, chews her out a little bit more, and then walks away, and Hank busts out, what a bitch.
That's what I wrote down too. I'm like, what do you? I was like, Hank, why did you say that?
Hank, you can't say that. You're not allowed to say that.
I said, holy shit, Hank Lamau, what a bitch.
Mm-hmm. And
like,
Hank...
it is the... I have to assume that was like... I want to assume that was like ad-libbed, because it was too perfect.
God, I hope so. What a bitch.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, what a bitch.
Hank stands up and tries to comfort Luann by, talking about how lumpy his head is and pointing out, using the same marker on his own head where he's got spots. And Luann talks about how she, knew about that and compensated for it as well as she could, and she did a great job, technically speaking. And, they have their moment, and the teacher comes back almost tear-filled and talks about how, she
was always so hard on her.
She was too hard on her. She just didn't give her enough respect. She is a good hairstylist. She's going to let her pass because the teacher forgot the most important part of beauty school. Referrals and repeat customers.
Yeah. It's such a good way to end that line because it's like, oh, she learned her... Oh, no, she just learned that
Never mind.
She knows how to keep customers.
Yep. It's like, well, she passed her final, and that was the whole scary moment of the whole thing. Everyone's happy.
Everyone's happy.
Cut to Bobby preparing for the party.
So the ending of this episode is...
It's a doozy.
It's a perfect combination of a really sweet ending mixed with a really fucking what the fuck ending.
Yes.
Because it starts out, he's worried, he's kind of like thinking he's not gonna go. He's all dressed up, but he's thinking about just going home.
He gets all the way up to the yard of the house and then just kind of ducks into an alley because he's not ready yet. And
then Connie shows up and like, hey, what's going on? I thought you were going to the party. And he was like, I'm nervous. I'm worried about like my first kiss, blah, blah, blah. How he's been practicing on like with it.
Yeah.
And Connie's like, yeah, I've been practicing too. And he's like, you have a head too or something like that?
She kisses the back of her hand and he's like, wow, that's so much more convenient, and then does it himself.
Yeah.
And she says something like, what if we practiced on each other? He suggests, well, isn't that just kissing? I was like, no, it's just practicing. It's fine.
Yeah.
So they do.
They have a practice kiss, quote unquote practice kiss, and it's technically both their first kiss. And it was like
the first time they bump into each other because they're going in with their eyes closed.
Right, because they're very awkward, like
11,
almost teenagers.
Yeah.
And when they open their eyes and do it again, it's a really it's quick. There's not a lot of fanfare to it. It's a really sweet moment.
It is a child's first kiss.
Yeah, it's very, I think, realistic compared to what people try to make it out to seem.
Yes.
Where it's like, oh, it's this big moment. But it's like, it's just you kiss someone, like, oh, it's over.
Yep. It's a sweet little moment. Neither of them take it very seriously. Con Jr. is called away.
Yeah, she moves on, and Bobby kind of has a new confidence.
Yeah.
Sort of.
So he goes into the party. It cuts to the basement where they're doing spin the bottle. There's a girl in there that I wrote down, has red hair and looks like Arnold from the Magic School Bus.
Oh my fucking god.
And it's Bobby's turn to spin the bottle. As it's spinning,
all the teenagers are really, or like preteens, are all really like quiet.
Yes, they're very nervous,
awkward looking.
Yeah. Bobby with his new confidence takes the initiative and starts spinning. And who else walks in but Dale?
Dale and Nancy.
Yep. They're having a bit of an argument about whether or not this is okay.
Yeah, Dale's yelling like, why is it so quiet down here? And Nancy's trying to like, oh, let them have their privacy. This is awkward type thing.
And the bottle slowly comes to a stop in a gap between the teenagers where conveniently standing is Nancy talking to Dale at the doorway. And Bobby, a man full of confidence.
Oh my god.
Invincible in the moment. He is a Goliath.
He is a bull in the proverbial china shop at this moment.
And he knows what he has to do. He knows what you do in this game. He puckers up, he closes his eyes, and launches himself whole-bodied at Diane. Nancy, that was it.
Fucking full-body tackle to kiss Nancy.
And you hear her shriek.
And it ends. It just
cut
goes
to black.
Cut to black and credits.
Yep.
It's like that is one hell of a seasonal ending.
Oh yeah.
And at one point, I'm like, I was watching this and I wrote down my notes. I'm like, okay, he's nervous as hell. He's gonna get awkward maybe. And I see as the bottle spins and it stops on Nancy, and I jokingly write jackpot as a joke. I'm like, oh, jackpot. I'm like, this is gonna turn into like a nightmare scenario where he freaks out or something, right? And as he starts moving, I'm like, no, this can't. I was like, this can't be how it ends. This isn't real.
Who else would?
I literally wrote down, this isn't real, and then I put, oh my god, the ending. What?
Yeah, that's where season 1 of King of the Hill ends.
It is a shocking ending in a very good way. It's not like a cliffhanger, but it is one of those moments of like, holy shit, that is definitely showing some sort of progression for a character, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I could see other shows like Family Guy or Simpsons or something like that doing an ending like this for shock value and being like, oh, I can't believe a character would do that. Look how awful this was and gross this was. But it's I think it's played off in just enough of a way where it's like, oh, this is just a childlike misunderstanding of a situation.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if this I hope this doesn't continue on season 2, episode 1, where it's like a continuation of what happened. But I imagine it's just gonna, if that scene were to continue, it would have been like Bobby like fucking face plants and misses.
Yeah, probably.
Or something. And it's like, I think that's a perfect way to end it, to be like, once again reinforcing these characters aren't perfect and they're pretty fucking flawed.
Yes.
But it's still in such a way where it's not harmful. Like, no one, besides Dale and the fire ants and Cotton with his misogyny, obviously, there's not a lot of moments in season 1 where characters are being malicious or purposely hurtful towards one another.
Not without directly retaliating out of some personal pride.
Right. Like, even with Luann and the whole smoking thing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call that being malicious. I'd call that being like, you care for your family, you want them to be okay.
Yeah.
As a sort of conflict. Like, there's plenty of conflict throughout the season, but I think the way that the show has shown itself so far is it's showing a lot of realistically exaggerated but realistically flawed characters.
Yes.
I don't think I would like this show nearly as much if every character was a fucking clown constantly. But they're comedic in enough ways where I can believe an ending where Bobby fucking tackles Nancy for misunderstanding how a spin the bottle works.
And ultimately likely giving her the briefest and weakest kiss that anyone's ever received in their life.
Absolutely. If it even reaches.
Yeah.
And I think it sets up perfectly. The whole season really sets up just this entire universe of characters and the type of stories that they can get into.
Yes.
I noticed it the more I watched. I was like, you know what? This show isn't crazy. This show isn't trying to make me bust out laughing, but it's making me laugh regardless, and I'm really enjoying every moment. There wasn't one specific episode where like, I can't watch this episode again.
Yeah.
I would never watch this episode again because they were all pretty good in their own rights. Even the fucking Cotton Hill episode.
The ones that were rough were probably better in their time.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means that it hasn't aged well, which is it's not an indictment. It's just kind of how things go. Nothing from 1997 is ever going to be as good now as it was back in the time when it was first aired.
There are certain things that are certain comedy bits and certain jokes that are timeless, but there's inevitably going to be time capsules of jokes and storytelling that you can't get away from.
Yeah.
And I think this first season is a perfect encapsulation of that, of just so many crazy jokes and ideas that are just of their time.
Mm-hmm. Like,
every time they fucking say the Orient, or making Bobby smoke 12 packs of cigarettes at once.
Yeah. It's very of its time. It's very good. I'm even for all that we've watched, I am very excited to continue seeing more.
Because this is like prototype almost. This is like this is still a series that's getting its feet wet. This is still a series that's learning its characters and the types of stories it wants to tell.
And I came into this thinking that I knew a handful of things about this because, again, for those that don't know, I didn't see any King of the Hill outside of memes for years until we did this. That's the incentive of it in the first place. And like, we saw all of our favorite jokes and memes. Almost all of them are in the first season. I can think of a couple that aren't, but like, I thought I knew more, but like all of the things I've seen mostly come from here. I don't know what to expect, next. I thought I would be seeing more later.
I know a lot of the stuff that comes later, and I can literally picture in my head a lot of episodes I know that I've liked. I don't know where they come in the seasons, but I know that as the show goes on, they do refine these characters and make funnier, bigger, better scenarios out of each one of them.
Yeah. I think there is a big black void out there full of King of the Hill episodes that have a whole lot of things that I thought I knew about, and I guess I don't, because all I've known about is mostly the first season, I guess. Apparently. So there's a whole lot more to go through, and I'm very excited to do so.
Yeah, it's been I was worried when we first started doing this. I said this at the beginning, I think, when we first did our first episode, that I was really worried that we would start this and be like, oh, this show is really either slow or boring at the start, and we wouldn't want to keep going. Mm-hmm. But I'm glad that I've been wrong so far, that I've pretty much enjoyed all 12 of these first episodes.
Yeah.
And I'm not worried about going forward anymore. I'm like, you know what? Yeah, let's see what the next season starts off with.
Yeah, and you know what? Sometimes if we find ones that are a little bit weird, we can talk about why we didn't like them, like we did the couple ones this season.
There are definitely going to be those, because I remember some weird episodes out, like going back and forth on like episodes I know I've seen. Yeah. They definitely get a little out there in some concepts here and there, but I don't think that they're bad.
I mean, they have like 8 seasons or something. Some seasons getting up to like 24 episodes a season. Like they're going to have ones we don't like, and we can talk about them. We kind of have a good background to do so now.
There's 13 seasons. Yeah.
Okay, maybe Cleveland Show can have a shot.
Don't put that out into the world.
Yeah, cut that out. Future me, cut that out. I won't.
Fuck. You won't.
I won't.
We'll always keep the Cleveland promise somewhere in there.
Yeah. I'm excited.
I am too.
I'm looking forward to season 2. It'll be a minute before we get to those episodes. I'm gonna be away for a little bit, and then I'll be editing these, and I'm probably gonna try and release them about a week apart from each other.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
And once we get those out, I guess you and I will talk about when we start season 2. We'll probably do another batch of 3 episodes, because I think that was a good number to talk about in a single package.
Considering how like in depth we get in each one, and how we just kind of like ramble about what we liked and the things that we felt like worked, I think 3 works.
Yeah, I think our pattern will change a little bit once we get familiar enough with the situations that we don't have to go so in depth about our thoughts about particular characters.
Eventually, we're gonna run out of things to say other than like, we're gonna get tired of saying, "Oh, Dale was funny," or "Bobby was funny."
Bobby, say funny words. Bill, say something depressing again.
Bill, make me sad.
Oh. But I think for now, I like the pace that we're going. I'm looking at how long we've been recording, and I'm definitely gonna have to trim it up a little bit.
Well, yeah.
But I think I'm excited, looking forward.
I am too. I'm looking forward to seeing what else we get, and eventually, hopefully, getting funnier, better episodes that we can just crack up about in here.
Yeah. The only other like weird joke or frequently memeable moment that I can think of is the Halloween episode, and I can't wait to get there.
Is that the purse one? That's my purse. I don't know you.
Oh, that's right. There's also that's my purse. I was thinking of the one where Hank is like having a weird Satanist Halloween hallucination. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
We'll see when we get there.
We'll see when we get there. But thank you for joining me, friend. Thank you for
absolutely.
Whoever's out there listening, thank you for listening.
Thank you very much.
We'll keep y'all posted when we do our next one, but until then, you have plenty of time to watch season 1.
Have a good one.
Have a good one, everybody.
Later.
All right.
All right, perfect. All right, and definitely didn't just
Yeah.
have the most rushed ending of the podcast we've done yet.
Yeah, I mean, in previous episodes, we didn't even have an ending, really.
It's true. It's true. Wow, we should probably done another clap. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, we'll do a clap. We'll do a clap. It'll be good.
All right.
All right. 3, 2, 1. There we go.
I love clapping.
I love clapping.
We're gonna have a compilation of just how many times we've clap sunk in like every single one of these.
Yeah, we absolutely will. I'll do my best.
Oh my lord.